Snow swirled across the empty streets of Pittsburgh as millionaire Graham Whitlow hurried past a corner bakery, unaware that his leather wallet had just slipped from his coat. Hours later, a small girl in a torn jacket spotted it half buried in the snow. Her little brother clung to her hand, his lips blue from hunger. She opened the wallet, hesitated, then pulled out one single bill. With shaking fingers, she scribbled a note, tucked it inside, and left the wallet at the bakery door. By morning, Graham would find it, and the words inside would bring him to his knees. If you want to know what happens next, stay with me until the end of the video. And if you still believe deep in your heart that God is always watching over you silently, arranging everything then right now, leave a comment saying Amen below this video. Because who knows, at the very moment you write those words, a blessing may quietly enter your life. Snow had fallen hard over Pittsburgh that morning, blanketing the steel bridges and the old brick buildings along the river in a quiet kind of sorrow. From the top floor of his glass apartment overlooking the Monongahela, Graham Whitlow stared at a city he had helped modernize, yet no longer recognized. The skyline shimmered with new towers, many built with the help of his company Whitlow Analytics. But for all the glass and light, Graham felt only distance. He lived by routine. Black coffee, no sugar. 20 minutes on the treadmill while scanning overnight data reports. A shower so cold it stung. Every detail of his life was optimized, efficient, and utterly lifeless. He had once dreamed of building technology that would connect people. Now he couldn't remember the last time he'd spoken to someone without a screen in between. His assistant called, reminding him about the city council meeting on the Lawrenceville redevelopment project. Graham mumbled a distracted, "I'll be there," though he already knew he wouldn't stay long. The project was supposed to breathe new life into an aging neighborhood, but something about it felt wrong lately. Too many shortcuts, too many small voices ignored. Later that afternoon, seeking air more than coffee, he walked through Lawrenceville's narrow streets, where murals clung to cracked walls, and the smell of cinnamon drifted from a corner bakery called Sloan's. Its sign, hand-painted and faded, read "Bread and Coffee," since 1956. Something about its worn warmth made him step inside. The bell above the door chimed softly. Inside, an elderly man, dusted with flour, looked up from behind the counter. "Haven't seen you before," he said kindly. Graham smiled faintly. "First time. I just needed something real today." "Well, you found it," the man said, sliding over a mug of steaming coffee. "Strong enough to wake the dead." The place was small, just 3 tables, the smell of fresh bread, and a radio murmuring old jazz tunes. For 10 minutes, Graham sat there in silence, sipping coffee that burned his tongue, but somehow felt right. No investors, no algorithms, no expectations, just warmth. When he left, dusk had begun to fall, coating the streets in silver light. He tucked a few bills under his saucer, nodded to the baker, and stepped outside into the swirling snow. He didn't notice when his black leather wallet slipped from his coat pocket and fell to the icy sidewalk, a quiet accident that would ripple through every life it touched. A few hours later, 2 small figures passed that same corner. Tessa Bloom, her coat too thin for the cold, and her little brother Milo clutching her hand. When she spotted the wallet near the bakery door, her breath caught. Inside were hundreds of dollars, more money than she'd ever seen. Her stomach ached with hunger. Milo's lips were blue, and there, in the soft light of the bakery window, a choice waited that would change everything. Tessa Bloom hesitated under the yellow glow of the streetlight. The wallet lay half buried in the snow. a dark shape against the white. She glanced down at her brother Milo, whose small fingers clutched hers tightly. His face was pale, his breath thin clouds in the freezing air. "Maybe it's empty," Milo whispered. Tessa knelt and brushed off the frost. Her hands were red from the cold. When she opened the wallet, her heart jumped. Neat stacks of bills, credit cards, an ID that read Graham Whitlow. The man looked stern in the photo, the kind of person who never missed a meal. Her stomach cramped at the smell of bread drifting from the bakery door behind them. They hadn't eaten all day. The $20 bills could feed them for weeks. But as she stared at the money, guilt prickled through her chest. "It's not ours," she murmured. Milo shivered. "But Tess, I'm hungry." She bit her lip, torn between the ache in her belly and the ache in her heart. Finally, she pulled one bill from the wallet, just one, and slipped it into her pocket. Then she rummaged through her worn backpack until she found a piece of notebook paper, edges crumpled from school, long forgotten. Her pencil was dull, her handwriting shaky, but she pressed hard enough for every word to show "I'm sorry." "My brother was hungry. I took one bill to buy bread. I promise I'll pay you back someday." She folded the note and placed it carefully on top of the money, then closed the wallet and held it to her chest. The snow fell heavier now, stinging her cheeks. Without another word, she led Milo inside the bakery. The warmth made her dizzy. Mr. Sloane looked up surprised. "Evening, kids," he said gently. "You look frozen." Tessa laid the 20 on the counter. "2 small loaves, please." He wrapped the bread, watching her trembling hands. When he handed it over, she added in a quiet voice, "If someone comes looking for a wallet named Graham Whitlow, please give this back." She slid the wallet across the counter. "I used one bill, but I'm paying it back. I don't owe anyone now." Mr. Sloane's throat tightened. "You're a good girl," he whispered. But she was already turning toward the door, Milo's hand in hers, snow swirling around them like ghosts. The next morning, Graham woke to the same sterile quiet as always. He reached for his coat and froze. The wallet was gone. Irritation flickered first. Habit made him retrace every step in his mind. Then he remembered Sloane's bakery. When he arrived, Mr. Sloane was arranging rolls behind the glass counter. He looked up and smiled knowingly. "You must be Mr. Whitlow," he said. "I believe this belongs to you." Graham exhaled in relief as the man placed the wallet on the counter. "Where did you find it?" "Right outside, early this morning," Mr. Sloane replied. "A young girl brought it in, said her name was Tessa, left you a note." "A note?" Mr. Sloane nodded toward the wallet. "You might want to read it before you count what's missing." Graham frowned, flipping it open. At first, everything looked normal. Cards, cash still folded neatly. Then he noticed the paper. Small crinkled the handwriting uneven. He read the message once, then again, and something inside him broke open. "I'm sorry. My brother was hungry. I took one bill to buy bread. I promise I'll pay you back someday." The words were simple, yet they struck him harder than any boardroom loss or business betrayal. A child who had nothing had chosen honesty over survival. Graham stood motionless, the note trembling between his fingers. For years, he'd measured worth in profits, market share, growth charts. But standing there in that small bakery, the numbers seemed meaningless. He looked at Mr. Sloane, voice barely steady. "Do you know where they are?" Mr. Sloane shook his head. "They come around sometimes. A little girl and her brother. The boy's not well, I think." Graham closed his wallet, tucking the note carefully back inside. It felt heavier now, not with money, but with meaning. "If they come again," he said softly, "tell them I'm looking for them. Not to take anything away, but to thank them." Outside, the snow was still falling, covering the sidewalks, the rooftops, the city that suddenly looked different to him. The man who had spent years chasing data and fortune now chased something far rarer, a truth written by a hungry child's hand. For the first time in years, Graham Whitlow ignored his schedule. The board meeting could wait. The city council, the investors, the endless charts. None of it mattered. What mattered was a few shaky lines of pencil on a torn sheet of paper. That morning, Pittsburgh looked like a city carved from ice. The bridges glistened, the river smoked in the cold, and the air cut like glass. Graham walked through it, hands deep in his coat pockets, the note folded carefully inside. Every time he touched it, something stirred in him, something fragile like hope trying to thaw. He started at Sloane's bakery, asking the few early customers if they had seen a little girl, maybe 7, dark hair, holding her brother's hand. Most shrugged, others looked away. To them, lost children were not rare. They were part of the city's quiet winter chorus, the ones you learned not to see. Mr. Sloane offered what he knew. "They come by sometimes before closing," he said. "The boy coughs a lot. I've tried to give them soup, but they always insist on paying, even if it's just a coin or two." Graham nodded. "If they come back, tell them I'm looking." He left his card, but the gesture felt hollow. You couldn't buy trust with business cards. As the day wore on, he walked farther through Lawrenceville's narrow alleys, past murals of angels fading beneath graffiti, past shelters where the smell of burnt coffee and cold iron filled the air. At one church kitchen, a volunteer named Ms. Darlene Pierce paused when he showed her the note. "That handwriting," she said softly. "It's careful, like she was afraid to make a mistake." She sighed. Kids like that avoid official shelters. They're scared of being separated by child services. If she's protecting her brother, she'll hide anywhere the world doesn't look. Her words hit him harder than the wind outside. He left a donation envelope big enough to keep the kitchen running for weeks, then kept walking not to buy redemption, but because standing still hurt too much. By dusk, the snow thickened into a storm. His shoes were soaked, his breath ragged, his face stung raw. At a bus stop near the river, an old man selling coffee from a thermos pointed toward the bridge. "Sometimes a family or two sleeps under there," he said. "You might check before the cold gets worse." So Graham did. The 16th Street Bridge loomed ahead, its steel ribs coated in frost. Beneath it, shadows huddled near the concrete, the wind howling through broken pipes. He searched, calling softly, but only the river answered. He stood there for a long time, snow melting on his coat, staring at the dark water. The note was still in his pocket, damp from his gloves. He unfolded it once more and read it under the dim streetlight. "I'm sorry, my brother was hungry." His voice cracked as he whispered the words aloud. "You already paid me back." And for the first time in years, Graham Whitlow prayed not for success, not for forgiveness, but for a chance to find 2 children who owed him nothing. Somewhere beneath the falling snow, their small footprints were vanishing. And yet, in that fading trail, he felt the faint beginning of something new, a purpose worth following. The storm struck without mercy that night. Snow whirled through the streets of Pittsburgh, blotting out the city lights, until the skyline disappeared behind a curtain of white. The river roared like a living thing, swollen and angry beneath the bridges. Graham Whitlow gripped a flashlight, his gloved hand trembling as wind tore at his coat. He had been searching for hours, and his driver had long since begged him to turn back. But he couldn't. Something deeper than reason pushed him forward. Under the 16th Street Bridge, the air was heavy with the smell of wet concrete and rust. The beam of his flashlight sliced through the darkness and then froze. Two small shapes huddled beneath a cracked pillar wrapped in a torn blanket. Graham's heart kicked hard against his ribs. He stepped closer, boots crunching in the ice. The older child stirred, then sat up sharply, shielding the smaller one with her body. "Who's there?" She called, her voice small but fierce. Graham lowered the light immediately, letting it fall to the ground. "It's okay," he said gently. "My name's Graham. I'm not here to hurt you." The girl's eyes narrowed. "People say that before they take you away." "I know," he replied softly, "but I think you left something that belongs to me." The words seemed to confuse her. She looked at the flashlight beam and then at the man's face. Her cheeks were raw from cold, her hair matted by snow. "You're lying," she whispered. Graham took another slow step forward. "You wrote me a note," he said, "about your brother, about the bread." At the mention of the word bread, her shoulders stiffened. The little boy coughed a deep, rasping sound that made her turn in panic. She pulled him closer. "He's sick," she said, her voice breaking. "Please don't call anyone. They'll take us apart." Graham's throat tightened. "No one's taking you anywhere," he promised. "But he needs a doctor. Right now." The girl didn't answer. The wind howled through the bridge, scattering snow into their faces. Graham unbuttoned his heavy coat and knelt, draping it over both children. He reached out, feeling the boy's forehead. It was burning. "I have a car just up the hill," he said. "Let me take you somewhere warm. You can rest, both of you." The girl looked at him, suspicion fighting against desperation. "If you're lying," she said, "I'll run." He met her eyes. "Then I'll run with you." Something in her gaze shifted fear, giving way to the faintest thread of trust. Finally she nodded. Graham lifted the boy carefully into his arms. The child's head fell against his shoulder, fever radiating through the thin blanket. The girl followed close behind, holding onto his coat as if afraid he might vanish in the storm. They climbed the slippery steps to the street above. The city was a blur of snow and light sirens, distant and hollow. Inside the car, Graham turned the heat to full blast and called Dr. Naomi Kirk, the pediatrician he knew from a charity board. "I need your help," he said urgently. "No questions, just a place for 2 kids. One's very sick." At the small clinic on Bloomfield Avenue, nurses rushed to take the boy inside. The girl refused to let go of her brother's hand until Graham promised he wouldn't leave. They watched from the hallway as Dr. Kirk worked quickly. Oxygen mask, IV fluids, fever reducers. Minutes dragged like hours. Graham stood motionless, coat still damp, heart hammering. Finally, the doctor emerged, her voice calm but tired. "He's stable," she said. "Severe pneumonia, but you got him here just in time." Graham exhaled, closing his eyes. Relief felt like pain. Dr. Kirk looked at him, then at the girl sitting silently by the door. "She's been taking care of him, hasn't she?" "Yes," Graham whispered. "Looks like she's been taking care of both of them for a long time." The doctor nodded. "Then tonight, Mr. Whitlow, I think you saved 3 lives. Hers, and maybe your own." Graham looked through the glass at the sleeping boy, then at the girl clutching her brother's hand. For the first time in years, his chest ached, not from emptiness, but from feeling too much. Outside, the storm kept raging. But inside that small clinic, something warm had begun to live again. The storm had passed by morning, leaving the city quiet and pale under a thin layer of snow. Inside the small clinic, Milo Bloom slept peacefully for the first time in days. His breathing was steady, now his colour returning. Beside him, Tessa had fallen asleep in the chair, her small hand still wrapped around his. Graham Whitlow stood by the window, watching the sunlight slide over the frozen streets. Something inside him felt still for the first time in years, like the noise had finally stopped. When Dr. Naomi Kirk entered with the discharge papers, Graham held up a hand. "Let them rest a bit longer," he said quietly. "They'll come with me for now." She raised an eyebrow. "You serious about this?" He nodded. "They have nowhere else to go." That evening, his car pulled up in front of the glass tower he called home. To the children, it looked like something out of a movie, too big, too clean, too bright. Tessa hesitated at the door, clutching Milo's hand. "You live here?" she whispered. "Yeah," Graham said softly, "but it's just a place. You can stay until he's better." The penthouse felt different that night. The quiet no longer comforted him. It felt like it had been waiting for something or someone. He made grilled cheese sandwiches, burned the first batch, and laughed at himself. Tessa smiled for the first time. Milo, still weak, managed a few bites before curling up on the couch beneath a blanket that looked far too big for him. When they finally fell asleep, Graham sat nearby watching the snow fall through the wide glass windows. The city sparkled below, cold and distant, yet for the first time it didn't make him feel alone. Days passed, slow and tender. Milo recovered quickly and Tessa began to hum while she drew pictures at the kitchen counter. The penthouse, once silent as a museum, now echoed with the soft noise of life, the scrape of crayons, the clatter of dishes, the faint sound of laughter. Every morning she asked the same question. "Are we going to stay here forever?" And every morning Graham smiled and said, "For as long as you need." But forever, as he would soon learn, was rarely as long as it should be. One afternoon, while the children were napping, his phone buzzed with a message from a private investigator he'd quietly hired weeks earlier. "I think I found something, or rather, someone." The name that followed made Graham's chest tighten. Victor Landry, father of Tessa and Milo, recently released from a correctional facility in Butler County, arrested years ago for breaking into a pharmacy. His wife had died before the trial. The report continued. He's been searching for them since he got out. Graham sank into the couch, the city lights reflecting off the windows. Relief and dread battled inside him. He wanted to be glad the children weren't truly alone, but the thought of losing them felt unbearable. He could hear Tessa laughing faintly from the other room, a sound he'd grown to depend on. He rubbed his hands over his face, realizing how quickly they'd become part of him. That night, as he tucked the blanket around Milo and turned off the lamp, Tessa's small voice stopped him. "Graham." "Yes." She hesitated, eyes sleepy but serious. "Do you ever get lonely?" He smiled faintly. "Not anymore." She nodded, half dreaming already. "Me neither." He stood there for a long time after they fell asleep, the weight of truth pressing against his chest. Outside, the snow had started again, gentle this time, almost forgiving. But in his heart, Graham knew peace never lasted without a cost. Somewhere out there, a father was looking for the children sleeping under his roof. And when that moment arrived, everything would change again. A week later, the phone call came. The number was unfamiliar, the voice steady but nervous. "Mr. Whitlow," This is the Department of Child and Family Services. A man named Victor Landry has come forward claiming to be the father of the children in your care." For a moment, Graham couldn't speak. He looked toward the living room where Tessa and Milo were building a fort out of blankets, their laughter echoing through the penthouse. The life he'd built with them suddenly felt as fragile as that small fortress of pillows. The meeting was scheduled at a courthouse near downtown Pittsburgh. The day came grey and cold, the river swollen with melting snow. Graham sat beside the children in the waiting area, their small hands gripping his. Across the room, a man stood, worn coat, rough hands, eyes full of guilt and hope. Victor Landry. When Tessa saw him, her fingers tightened. "That's my dad," she whispered, unsure if it was joy or fear in her voice. Victor stepped forward. "Tessa, Milo," his voice broke. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to leave you. I was trying to get medicine for your mom. I thought I could fix everything, but I just made it worse." Tessa looked down, her voice trembling. "Mom got sick. You weren't there." Victor's eyes filled. "I know. I can't undo that. But I can try to be here now if you'll let me." In the courtroom, the judge listened to both men. Graham had provided a home warmth and care. Victor had made mistakes, but had also rebuilt his life's steady job clean record, a quiet promise to do better. The question, the judge said finally, is not who loves them more, but what serves their best interest. Victor rose first. "Mr. Whitlow gave my kids what I couldn't safely hope a reason to smile again. I'll spend the rest of my life earning that back." Then Graham stood. "They saved me," he said simply. "Before Tessa and Milo, I had everything that money could buy, and none of it mattered. They taught me what real love looks like. But they deserved the chance to know their father." Silence filled the room. The judge nodded slowly. "Mr. Whitlow, your guardianship will continue for 6 months. Mr. Landry, you'll have supervised visitation during that time. The court expects cooperation from both of you." Outside snow began to fall again, soft and silent. On the courthouse steps, Victor approached Graham. "You could have kept them," he said quietly. "You didn't have to share." Graham met his eyes. "They're not mine to keep. They're ours to protect." Weeks turned to months. Saturdays at the park became routine, Victor bringing pastries, Graham bringing sandwiches. Tessa painted sunsets, Milo chased pigeons, and laughter replaced fear. One afternoon, as the sun dipped over the river, Milo looked up from his kite and asked, "Are we still a family?" Graham glanced at Victor, then at the children. "Of course we are," he said. "Family isn't about who you belong to, it's about who shows up." The kite soared high, cutting through the golden sky. Tessa's laughter carried on the wind. Graham watched them, the note still tucked in his wallet, the one that had started it all. He no longer read it for guilt, but for gratitude, because in returning what was lost, a little girl had returned him to life. Today's story comes to an end, but its echo still lingers in the heart. What do you think? Give us a score from 1 to 10, and feel free to share a few words in the comments. Every voice here is valued and heard. Before you go, let me ask you gently, are you doing okay today? If your heart feels heavy, let this place be a quiet corner where you can share and find comfort. See you again in the next bedtime story, where love and hope remind us that no matter how dark the night may seem, kindness will always prevail.